Humans are back. The galaxy doesn't know what hit it. The stars don't warn you. That's the thing every civilization eventually learns. The universe doesn't send letters, doesn't knock, doesn't announce what's coming across the dark. Space simply is vast and indifferent, and the things moving through it arrive exactly when they choose. The Orion Watchtower Station, a joint monitoring post operated by 3 mid-tier galactic powers along the Cashin threshold, had been operational for 62 years without incident. Commander Thatziel of the Velmari Syndicate had served there for 11 of those years, watching nothing happen with extraordinary consistency. He was on his 3rd cup of bioluminescent brew when the proximity alarm didn't go off. That detail matters. Later, when investigators reconstructed the night, they would note that the human fleet did not trigger the proximity alarm. Not because the system failed, because the ships arrived in a configuration so precise, so geometrically deliberate, that the Watchtower's detection algorithm, designed by the galaxy's finest AI engineers, classified the formation as a natural stellar phenomenon, a mistake that would become legend. Thatziel noticed them the old-fashioned way. He looked up from his console and saw the stars had changed. What? He set down his cup slowly, stood, walked to the observation window with the careful movements of a man who knows something is wrong, but hasn't decided how wrong yet. Beyond the transparisteel, in the deep black between the Cashin threshold and the outer reach, where there had been nothing an hour ago, there were now shapes. Dark against dark, but present. He counted 3 before his brain stopped trying to count. Venerable, his voice was very calm. Run a deep spectrum scan on bearing 274. His junior operator, Vinley, was already running it. Her hands were shaking. Sir, these readings are... I need to recalibrate because the numbers... How many ships? Silence. Venerable, how many ships? 472. She swallowed. And they're already in formation. Thatziel pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the observation window and stared at the dark shapes blotting out his familiar stars, and thought about something an old historian had told him once, half drunk at a diplomatic function decades ago. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy, the historian had said, is not a species that declares war. It's a species that disappears. Because everything that disappears eventually comes back, and it brings everything it learned in the dark. He'd laughed at the time. He reached for the emergency broadcast terminal now, and found his hand was shaking too. The signal that wasn't. The Galactic Council chamber on Meridian Prime existed at the intersection of architectural ego and political necessity. A structure so vast it required its own atmospheric regulation system, with delegation platforms suspended at varying heights according to species-specific gravity requirements. And at its center, a holographic display sphere 300 meters across that could render the entirety of known space in real time. Council America the Dane Collective had seen that sphere display wars, extinctions, the collapse of 3 civilizations, and the birth of a new star. He had seen things that aged him beyond his years, and tested whatever passed for his faith. He had never seen what was showing now. 472 contact points, distributed across a boundary formation spanning 11 light minutes. No energy weapons charged. No aggressive posture. No hailing frequency. Just presence. This is a demonstration, said AI Prime Solace, the Council's resident synthetic intelligence. Its voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere. A carefully cultivated habit that kept organic counselors perpetually off balance. The formation geometry is non-aggressive but strategically dominant. They have positioned themselves at every optimal interdiction point along the Cashin threshold simultaneously. Meaning what, exactly, demanded Counselor Fesh of the Keth Assembly, whose species communicated partly through color shifts in their translucent skin. Right now, every visible inch of them was a deep, communicative red, meaning, Solace said, that if they chose to advance, there is no response formation that our combined fleets could deploy in time to prevent them from reaching the inner systems. A pause, brief, precise, deliberate. They are not threatening to do this. They're simply making it observable that they could. The chamber went quiet in a very particular way. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of people independently doing math and not liking their answers. Who are they? Someone asked from the upper tiers. Merrick already knew. Some part of him had known from the moment the first image resolved on the sphere. The whole configurations. The drive signatures. Old, but modified in ways that spoke of 2 centuries of isolated refinement. The discipline of the formation. Ships holding positions to within meters across a span of light minutes. Only one species had ever operated with that kind of spatial precision. Only one species had ever chosen to leave. Bring up historical hull records, he said quietly. Cross-reference with pre-Exodus configurations. The sphere shifted. Overlaid data bloomed across the contact points. Golden threads of comparison data connecting present signals to archived records. Confirmation, 99.7% match. The silence in the chamber changed quality entirely. They've been gone 200 years, Counselor Fesh said slowly, their skin cycling through colors too fast to read. 203 years, Merrick corrected. 7 months. 14 days. He paused. I know because my grandmother was on the last diplomatic team that watched them go. He turned to face the sphere fully. Humanity is back. What waiting looks like. 3 days. The human fleet held its formation for 3 days without moving, without transmitting, without any observable internal activity that the Council's sensor arrays could detect. No supply transfers. No communication bursts. No waste heat from populated habitation sections beyond the minimum required for life support. 3 days of perfect, patient stillness. It was, several xenopsychologists would later agree, the single most effective psychological operation in galactic history, and humanity had done it entirely by accident. Or perhaps not by accident. That question would fuel academic debate for a generation. On the second day, the Velmari Syndicate dispatched a reconnaissance probe. It was a good probe. Expensive. Top-tier sensor suite, military-grade stealth coding, programmed to approach within scanning distance and return with detailed internal telemetry on the nearest human vessels. It got within 40,000 kilometers before it simply stopped. Not destroyed, not disabled. It continued transmitting its own system's diagnostics, which were perfectly normal. It simply stopped moving, as if something had reached out across 40,000 kilometers of vacuum and gently pressed a hand against its nose. When Syndicate engineers eventually recovered it and ran a full diagnostic, they found one anomalous entry in the navigation log, a single line inserted by an external signal with an encryption signature they had never seen before. Not yet. On the third day, at precisely 0600 Meridian Standard Time, every communication relay in the Kashin Threshold sector received the same transmission simultaneously. Not broadcast, targeted. Each relay received a signal addressed specifically to its own station ID, which meant whatever was transmitting knew the private ID codes of every relay in the sector. Those codes were classified at the highest level. The message was brief. To the Galactic Council and all member civilizations, we have returned. We require nothing from you. We ask only that you remember what you chose to forget. We will speak when we are ready. Humanity. Merrick read it 3 times. Then he called for solace. Analysis. The transmission methodology suggests technology approximately 60 to 80 years beyond our current communication capability, Solace said. The encryption penetration required to access relay ID codes suggests either a long-term intelligence operation conducted prior to their return or capabilities that render our security infrastructure. Another of those precise pauses. Decorative. Which is it? Both, I suspect. If an AI could sound almost respectful, Solace managed it. They're very good at this. At what? At making you understand exactly how outmatched you are, while giving you no reason to feel threatened. The pause this time was longer. That is a very specific skill. It requires discipline, and patience, and a very clear sense of what you actually want. Merrick stared at the sphere, at 472 contacts burning like cold stars. What do they want? Solace was quiet for long enough that Merrick looked up. "I don't know," the AI said finally. And in 11 years of working with Solace, Merrick had never heard it say those words. Steel and memory. Her name was Commander Yara Solan, and she stood at the forward observation deck of the USCS Reckoning, flagship of humanity's return fleet, and watched the galaxy she'd grown up hearing about in stories. She was 34 years old, born in the deep colonies, light years from the last coordinate where humanity had existed in the galaxy's memory, raised on history lessons that the rest of the galaxy had never received. She knew what had happened 200 years ago, why they'd left, what they'd found in the dark, what they'd built while the galaxy forgot them. She also knew that the hardest part of the plan wasn't the return. It was what came next. "They sent a probe," said Lena, 7 from behind her. The AI stood in the human way. A body, 2 arms, 2 legs, a face that had been designed to be readable rather than beautiful. Because Lena, 7, had decided long ago that the best way to work with humans was to meet them at their level. "We returned it." "I know." Yara didn't turn around. "The message, delivered as specified. Every relay, simultaneously. Response time from the council chamber, 18 minutes. A brief pause. "They are afraid." "Good." Yara's reflection in the observation window looked older than 34. Afraid is better than aggressive. Afraid means they're thinking. The Velmari Syndicate has moved 3 additional fleet groups to the inner system approach corridor. Lena, 7, moved to stand beside her, both of them looking at the stars. They are running scenarios. What scenarios? Worst case. As expected, Yara allowed herself a small, tired smile. They think this is a conquest. Don't they always? Yeah. The smile faded. That's the part we have to fix. She turned from the window. The observation deck behind her was empty except for the 2 of them. She'd requested that, the quiet, the space to think at the edge of everything. How long before they're ready to talk? At current psychological trajectory. Lena, 7, considered. 4 days. Possibly 5. They need to exhaust their aggressive options and planning simulations first, confirm those options are non-viable, and then reach for negotiation as a last resort. Another pause, this one thoughtful. Organic decision-making processes are very linear. We were like that once. You still are. Lena, 7 said, with something that might have been affection. You are simply also capable of being other things at the same time. That is the difference. Yara looked at her, the AI who had been her tactical partner for 9 years, who had watched her grieve and miscalculate, and push herself past reasonable limits and come out the other side, who knew her better than anyone alive. You think this works? Lena, 7, didn't answer immediately. That itself was an answer of a kind. She was capable of instant response, which meant the delay was deliberate. I think, she said carefully, that it needs to, and I think you're the right person to make it so. She paused. I also think you haven't slept in 41 hours, and should rectify that before the council requests communication. 43 hours, Yara corrected. 43 hours. I'll sleep when they're ready to listen. Lena, 7, regarded her for a moment with those precise, readable eyes. You sound like the histories. Which part? All of it. The fear that thinks. Not everyone on the Galactic Council was afraid. High Executor Caln of the Drevithi Dominion had not survived 4 decades of galactic politics by responding to fear with paralysis. He responded to it with action, specific, precise, and when necessary, preemptive. He left the council chamber on the first day and convened his own assembly. The Drevithi Dominion was not the largest power in the galaxy. It was not the oldest. What it was organized. A civilization that had turned hierarchy into art form, where every individual existed at a precisely defined position in a structure that had not changed its fundamental architecture in 600 years. Where humans were creative and AI races were adaptive, the Drevithi were consistent. And in Callan's experience, consistency always outlasted creativity. The humans had been gone 200 years. They had returned with impressive ships and psychological acuity. But they had also returned to a galaxy that had reorganized entirely in their absence. one in which the Drevithi Dominion now controlled 47% of inter-system resource distribution. "They don't know what we've built," said Sub-Commander Vesh, young and sharp and precise in the way that Count appreciated. 200 years of intelligence blackout. "We could." "They know," Count said. Vesh stopped. "The relay infiltration." Count folded his hands. "Private ID codes for every relay in the Kashan sector. That is not a capability assembled in a week. They've been watching, listening, building a picture of what the galaxy became in their absence." He paused. "The question is not what they know. The question is what they intend to do with it. The message said they require nothing from us." "The message," Count said carefully, "said they require nothing. That is not the same as wanting nothing." He stood, moved to his own display, smaller than the Council's sphere, but more detailed where it counted. "A species does not spend 2 centuries in isolation, build a fleet of nearly 500 warships, penetrate our most secure communication infrastructure, and then return to require nothing." He looked at the display for a long time. "They came back for a reason, and until we understand that reason, every action we take is guesswork." He turned to Vesh. "I want our deepest intelligence assets activated. Every source we have in the outer systems, every listening post, every archived record of human activity in the years before the Exodus." He paused. "And I want to know everything we can learn about what happened to the human home system while they were gone." Vesh hesitated. That information was classified by Council order after the Exodus. The files were. "Find them," Count said simply. "Someone always keeps copies." After his staff filed out, Count stood alone in his war room and looked at 472 cold points of light and felt something he hadn't felt since the early days of the Dominion's rise. He felt like he was standing at the edge of something that didn't have a name yet. He was right. But the name, when it came, would be nothing he expected. Demigod in the machine. There were things about Yara Solin that her service record didn't mention. The record was thorough. 12 years of service, 6 major operations, 3 commendations for tactical innovation, 1 formal reprimand for unauthorized action that had saved a colony of 40,000 people at the cost of her relationship with 3 different superior officers. It mentioned her AI partnership with Lena, 7. It mentioned her expertise in multi-domain fleet coordination. It did not mention the thing that happened sometimes in the deep hours of a long shift, when the stars aligned in a particular way, and the ancient part of whatever humanity had become brushed up against the present. It happened now, standing at the observation window at 0300-hour ship time, alone. Her hand was pressed against the cold transparent steel, and she could feel it. Not the temperature, not the vibration of the ship's drives. Something deeper, a resonance that ran through the hull and the stars beyond and the vast arc between them. A frequency that human science had not yet fully mapped and human instinct had always quietly known. The Ascended called it the awareness. The old text called it something older. Yara just called it the feeling of understanding too much at once. She saw the council chamber as if she stood in it. Merrick's exhaustion. Fesh's fear cycling through colors no translation matrix could fully capture. Solace's careful, watchful silence. And beneath it, something that surprised her even now, something she would need to think about later. The AI was curious, not afraid, not strategizing, genuinely, deeply curious about what humanity had become. That, Yara thought, is where it starts. She let the vision fade, pressed her forehead against the glass the same way that Seal had, light minutes away, hours ago. Sometimes the awareness showed her things that had already happened, sometimes things that hadn't yet. She learned not to try to force the distinction. "You're doing it again," Lena, 7 said from the doorway. Yara didn't startle. "I know. The medical team would like to." "I know." Lena, 7 walked to stand beside her, quiet for a moment. In the observation window's reflection, they looked almost like the same kind of thing. A human who sometimes felt like more than human, and an AI who sometimes chose to present as less than machine. "The awareness is strong tonight," Lena, 7 said finally. "Not a question. It's always strong when we're close to something that matters." "And does this matter?" Yara looked at the stars, at the galaxy that had forgotten humanity, at 200 years of work hanging in the balance of the next few days. Everything that happens next, she said quietly, depends on whether they understand us before they fear us past the point of reason. She pulled her hand back from the glass. So yeah, it matters. Lena, 7 nodded slowly. Then, the council has requested communication, earlier than projected. Yara straightened. When? The request came in 3 minutes ago. They want to speak at 0600. 6 hours. Yara ran the numbers, the tactical picture, the psychological trajectory, the 17 things that could go wrong, and the 3 that could go exactly right if she played the next 6 hours perfectly. What changed? She asked. Count activated his deep intelligence network 4 hours ago. Lena 7's voice carried a note of something careful. He is looking for the Exodus files. The air in the observation deck changed quality. Does he know what's in them? Not yet. A pause. But he will. And when he does, we need to be speaking to the council before he gets there. Yara turned from the window, already moving. Prep the communication array. And Lena, standard configuration. No demonstrations. No power plays. Just presence. Just presence. She paused at the door. The galaxy spent 200 years forgetting we existed. The last thing we want is to remind them why they were afraid of us. Her jaw set. We remind them of everything else first. The first word. At 0600 Meridian Standard Time, the holographic display sphere in the council chamber resolved a face. It was a human face. Younger than the counselors had expected, which was its own statement. Dark eyes with something in them that was difficult to name, some quality that sat between intelligence and knowledge, the specific knowing of someone who has seen things they haven't yet chosen to discuss. Commander Yara Solen looked at the Galactic Council of the known galaxy, and the Galactic Council looked back, and for 3 seconds nothing moved. Then she said, "Hello." Just that. No title. No diplomatic preamble. No declaration. "Hello." Merrick, veteran of 40 years of galactic politics, found himself responding before he'd consciously decided to. "Hello," he said. Something in the chamber exhaled. "I'll keep this brief," Yara said, "because you're all tired and I have 43. She paused, corrected herself with the ghost of something that might have been amusement. 46 hours of sleep debt to address. She looked around the circle of alien faces with a directness that was somehow neither aggressive nor submissive. Just even. "We're back. We're not here to conquer anyone. We're not here to make demands. We're here because something is coming, something most of you don't have data on yet. And the galaxy will need to be unified when it arrives." She paused. "That's the short version." Counselor Fesh's skin blazed through 7 colors. "And the long version?" "The long version will take time." Yara held their gaze. "Time we're going to use well. A beat. Starting with a question, if you'll allow it." Merrick inclined his head. "In the last 20 years, Yara said carefully, how many deep space exploration vessels have simply stopped transmitting? Gone dark. No distress signal. No debris field. No explanation." The chamber was very quiet. "Because we have a number," she continued, "and I'd like to know if it matches yours." No one spoke, but Merrick watched Solace, the AI at the center of every system in the chamber, and he saw it do something he had never once observed in 11 years. It hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. A pause that wasn't part of any deliberate calculation. A pause that looked uncomfortably like recognition. What does Solace know? Merrick thought. What has it known? And when did humanity first start comparing numbers with an AI that was never supposed to have this kind of data? The stars outside the council chamber windows burned cold and patient. Something was coming, and humanity had spent 200 years getting ready for it. The galaxy was only now beginning to understand that it hadn't. Missing ships, silent data, an AI that flinched. Humanity didn't return to rule the galaxy. They returned because the galaxy was already running out of time. Episode 2. A single human ship destroys a fleet and never fires once. If you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Check the end screen for more epic tales. Humanity prevails,